Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister.
Mr. Speaker, that question actually was a very general and meandering one, so I'm going to offer a general and specific answer. And let me say this. Yes, the government did undertake extraordinary spending to support Canadians during the fight against COVID-19. And Mr. Speaker, in this fiscal update, we are making provision for further spending in that fight. Mr. Speaker, I am absolutely confident that the vast majority of Canadians understand that this spending is not only necessary, it is essential to protect health and also to protect our economy. And Mr. Speaker, the results speak for themselves. Our economy has already more than recovered all the jobs we lost to the COVID recession. GDP is nearly at pre-pandemic levels, and this is a better performance than most of our peer countries around the world.
Can the minister confirm if Buy America will end with the signature of this deal?
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, there's a bit of a mystery here, because last week I think the Conservatives were urging us to capitulate. They were urging us to give in. And this week, the Conservatives seem not to want a deal at all. Our government did exactly what we promised Canadians. We said we wanted a good deal, not just any deal, and a good deal is what we have.
The Honourable Member for Carleton. Order.
Well, it's funny that they would choose to use the word capitulate, because capitulate is precisely what they have done. They have capitulated on pharmaceuticals, allowing Trump to force higher drug costs on Canadian patients to boost American drug company profits. They've capitulated, allowing for caps on the growth of Canadian auto exports. They have capitulated on copyright and dairy. The question is, what did they get in return for all of this capitulation? Did they get an end to Buy America? Yes or no?
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
As I said, Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives seem to have discovered a lot of Monday morning courage, having counseled throughout this negotiation that Canada take a softer line. I think Canadians have seen that our government was determined to stand up for the national interest while being fair-minded and seeking reasonable compromise. That's exactly what we've done, Mr. Speaker, and we got a good deal for Canadians.
And it's so important, maybe particularly in a virtual gathering like this one, to remember that COVID is still with us. And for me, as a politician, a political leader, the thing I wake up thinking about, the thing I go to bed thinking about, the thing I wake up in the middle of the night thinking about is COVID.
Mr. Speaker, the member opposite would have Canadians believe that inflation is a made-in-Canada problem. But experts agree that this is an international challenge that all of our peer countries are facing too. In fact, last week, even the leader of the opposition admitted that rising inflation is, quote, a global phenomenon. So I have a question to offer for the member opposite. Who is the real voice of economic policy for the Conservatives? The leader of the opposition, or the deputy leader, or maybe the member for Carleton?
Honourable Member for Portage-Lisker.
Finance Minister back to a meeting that she had just this Friday with Canada's most senior economists, that maybe she wants to ask them some questions and take their advice. Most of them agreed this government is making the inflation problem worse. In fact, BMO Chief Economist Doug Porter said, I think at the margin, there are some things fiscal policy can do. Fiscal policy, that's the federal government's responsibility. And that's basically to take the foot off the accelerator. So, Mr. Speaker, what that economist was saying is the government is contributing to the crisis. So take responsibility, and what are they going to do?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to quote another economist I respect very much, and I think Stephen Harper respected him too, because Prime Minister Harper appointed him to be Governor of the Bank of Canada. Stephen Poilievre was asked in a weekend TV show whether he thought Canadian government spending was the cause of inflation. He was unequivocal. His answer was, I think that's not right. He's right. The Conservatives are wrong.
The rules-based international order today is facing greater challenges than it has at any time since the Second World War, at any time since it was created. And that's very serious. You know, I sometimes scare myself when I say that. But I also think that we are starting to figure out how to navigate this new world and to, you know, we're starting to figure out ways for the rules-based international order to fight back.
On Monday, Cabinet invoked the Emergencies Act to restore public order. Information is now being shared by law enforcement with Canada's financial institutions. Financial service providers have already taken action based on that information. The emergency measures we put in place are being used, they are having an impact, and they will have a growing impact in the days to come. As of today, all crowdfunding platforms and the payment service providers they use must register with FINTRAC, and they must report large and suspicious transactions to FINTRAC. This will help mitigate the risk that these platforms receive illicit funds, increase the quality and quantity of intelligence received by FINTRAC, and make more information available to support investigations by law enforcement into these illegal blockades.
The way global capitalism has grown has been really bad for some people in the middle class in Western industrialized countries. And we need to fix that, because if we don't, then politicians will find ways of tapping into that rage. And the easiest way to channel that legitimate anger is to say, it is the fault of people who don't look like you in your own country, it's the fault of immigrants, or it is the fault of those bad foreigners who are cheating us on trade.
We are making these changes because we know that these platforms are being used to support illegal blockades and illegal activity, which is damaging the Canadian economy.
So, Mr. Speaker, I believe the chief economists and experts in this country, what is the government going to do? Will they at least admit that they're in government? They should have an answer for inflation. Are they going to do anything or just throw up their hands and say, not our problem, too bad everybody, keep paying high costs because the Liberals don't care?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, let me quote Governor Poilievre, an economist respected by all Canadians, further. He was asked whether the support we offered at the height of the COVID recession was the right thing to do. I quote, "What the stimulus did was to keep the economy from going into a deep hole in which we would have experienced persistent deflation. Read a book or two about the Great Depression in the 1930s and realize what was averted when we went through this. We know we did the right thing. Let me quote the governor and urge the Conservatives to read a book or two and understand that."
In Canada, we are a trading nation. About 60% of our GDP, trade accounts for about 60% of our GDP. We're very committed to it. We know we have to be, because that's where the good middle class jobs are, and jobs in the tradable sector are actually better paying than in the non-traded sectors. We get that. But we also know Canadians need to support trade for us to keep on doing it. It's one of the reasons we're so committed to the middle class agenda. And to prove my optimism to Larry, I want to say it can be done. So right now, I think a lot of people would categorize this as an era of anti-globalization, anti-trade. Well, in the past 2 years, Canada has renegotiated NAFTA with you guys. We have done a trade deal with Europe, CETA,
And we have done a trade deal with the Asia Pacific, CPTPP. Canada is now the only G7 country that has a trade deal with every other G7 country. And I think a big reason why Canadians support that, and they support it very broadly, is we are focused on the middle class and on the middle class agenda.
Honourable member for Carleton.
Well, she can misrepresent our position all she wants. I'm trying to find out the position of this government. We know that they've backed down to Donald Trump by capping future growth of Canadian auto exports. They backed down to Donald Trump, forcing Canadians to pay higher prices for pharmaceuticals. We know they backed down on copyright and dairy and other policies. What did they get in return, Mr. Speaker? Is there an end today to tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum? Yes or no?
Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, let me challenge very clearly something simply wrong in what the honourable member said. This deal is great for the car sector. It is great for the car parts sector. That's why the share prices of our 3 leading car parts companies went up today. That is not a market response that says this deal is bad for our companies and our workers. This is a deal that secures growth and investment in that crucial area, and we should all be proud that we got that.
My cabinet colleagues and I are meeting regularly, very regularly, including with the Commissioner of the RCMP, to discuss next steps. Our absolute priority is ending these illegal blockades and occupation. It gives me no pleasure to impose any of these measures. In fact, we do so with great sorrow. But do not doubt our determination to act, to defend our democracy, to defend our economy, and to restore peace, order, and good government. This is about following the money.
So that is the first priority, and it's the 100th priority.